So we're going to be doing a tier list here. Right here. We're going to be doing a tier list, and this tier list is going to go over some of the things that are just kind of absurd right now in the game that people aren't talking about. I've got a couple characters in mind that are considered largely low tier that need to be addressed. I think it's going to be pretty easy to just go through and talk about a couple of the 5 stars first, and then move into the 4 stars because they are going to be the majority of the talking point for this video. Starting off, we're going to say Havoc Rover, and it's no question that they're what would be considered like I'm just going to move all the guy ones down because they don't matter. Havoc Rover is one of the best DPSs. Their ult has massively high scalings. They also get access to Dreamless, and you can get them to S6 very easily, and they're one of the best investments you can make on your account because not only are all of their forms good, but they're always going to get better. Side note too, with Spectro Rover, something we need to realize is that once Jinshi drops, this character has Spectro damage shred on their S6, I believe. I can check. We'll check. Spectro Rover specifically has resistance shred on her S6. This is a big damage increase. This is way bigger than most people are going to give her credit for, and it's going to make her probably Jinshi's best teammate. Just for the 1.1 times damage boost for 20 seconds. As well as her own, she also gets a damage boost. But Jinshi getting a 1.1 times boost, if she's hitting for 1,000% scaling, that's 1,000 to 100% scaling. So it just adds that much more to her scalings, the more damage she basically is doing, the higher her scalings are, because it's multiplicative. And this also, it's damage resistance, so it's the way the math works technically. It's going to be more damage than 1.1 times because of how the number of your damage output is kind of divided by resistance, which is why there are bosses that are drastically resistant, like the tactical hologram later stages, like 4, 5, 6. They're so resistant that if you use the character, instead of hitting for 2,000, you're hitting for maybe 200. Resistance shred is going to help with that. You'll be hitting for maybe 400 even, right? Just that extra amount of shredded resistance. So it scales a little differently. It scales a little funkily, but it's one of the best scalings in the game. And knowing from Punishing Grey Raven, Crow Games' other game, damage resistance shred is going to be by far and away the best buff in the future. Characters that can do this to a well degree, basically, they're going to be amazing. But with Jinshi, she's going to be nuts. She also deals good damage. She stuns the enemy when she ults and when she switches, which is good for Jinshi because Jinshi is a little slower on rotation than most. She's a little flourishy, right? She also heals the team, so she's your team's healer. She also increases energy regen, so you can regen ult for Jinshi a little bit better. And she's got just overall good damage output for herself, which is why we're placing her where we are. Havoc Rover, on the other hand, kind of a similar vibe here. Just we know that she's the main DPS. She shreds herself. Let's see. Yes, her S4, her heavy attack, and her Resonance Liberation reduces resistance by 10%. So she shreds for herself and for the team, right? Resistance shreds nuts. The fact that Rover has it and is kind of the only character that does have it at the moment is insane. And we're going to be doing this tier list for 1.1. Jinshi benefits a lot from this. I'm not going to put her any higher because Jinshi's the only one that benefits really. But when Jinshi is out, oh my god, right? It's going to be insane. Rover being out of the way, we can go over some of the main broken characters. First of all, Vayrina. We all know Vayrina is by far and away the best support. She is super broken, best energy regen, best attack, or not attack, but like attack boost in the game. Longest attack boost with the healing set. It's another attack boost even longer, right? She is an absurdly good support. Very quick rotation time. Not as quick as like a Baizhi, but her rotations are still very fast, and her buffs last so long that she can keep them up pretty much the whole fight. She's the best healer and best energy charger almost, and the best buffer in the game by a lot. Next up, we can go ahead and go Gion. He's just the best DPS right now. Out like on his own outright. His damage is nuts. He's got good AoE. It is hard. It's going to be hard to top him for a while, actually, because there might be a better character at single target or at AoE, but there will not be a better character at both like he is for the foreseeable future. His weapon is also really, really good on him. He is probably, if you had to invest in one character, I would say he's the second best character to invest in, and the reason why is because Yinlin is for sure the first and most important character to invest in if you have her. The best off-field damage, probably third best energy recharge in the game right now. Her on-field damage is also really good. Her vibration damage is also really good. I mean, she checks 1, 2, 3, 4, probably like 5 or 6 boxes for the team. Her damage boost for someone like Kalcharo or Yuanwu or any other Electro ult-based DPS is going to be awesome. And just the fact that she buffs ult mean you can run her in Gion teams, and your damage is going to be higher than with Mortefi because Yinlin just deals more damage, right? For how long his ult lasts, Yinlin's striking every second. Mortefi's going to be shooting a lot more things, but they're not dealing as much damage. And Yinlin, if with a good built Yinlin, will have a higher damage output than Mortefi, although it is not ideal to do so if you have Kalcharo, because it's better. She's better with him, right? Makes him the best sustain on-field DPS in the game. Which, we can go to him next. Kalcharo, A tier. Same with kind of Havoc Rover. He's a little less hop on the field, burst damage, leave. He's a lot more hop on the field after Yinlin sets him up, and then he stays to do his rotation. People hot swap him. I think that is the wrong way to play this character. I have seen gameplay at a very high level of this character. I actually reacted to a video on it already. Sustained DPS is this guy's game. Okay, he's slow on the field. He's got really good damage numbers. You can animation cancel him. Swap canceling him gets rid of so much of his damage with Yinlin's buffs. It is kind of stupid to do so. You go Vayrina, buff the whole team. Yinlin, buff and set up the electric shocks off field for Kalcharo. Kalcharo, best DPS in the game. For the 20 seconds or so, he's going to pretty much be on field doing his thing. People are going to learn this eventually, and it's going to make him a lot easier to play. And I've seen some tournament gameplay as well. I would love to be in one, first of all, but I've seen some tournament gameplay as well where he is going to start performing more consistently because people are just going to stick with his buffs and play his kit well, rather than try to supplement the slowness of his kit with other characters, which reduces his damage output substantially. I mean, it's a 1.2 times increase twice off of Yinlin. Multiplicative. So say he's doing 1,000 damage, now he's doing 1,200, now he's doing like 1,450, right? It's almost a 1.5 times damage increase. It may even be more. I'd have to run the math. I'm doing this in my head, but it's a very, very strong damage boost. Switching into other characters, especially maybe not as main DPS bursty characters, is just not going to be worth it in the long run. A character that is worth hot swapping though, Encore, which we'll also throw up into A. Encore is very good. You hold down your heavy attack, she starts to explode, and then you switch off into someone else, let her become a nuclear bomb, and deal damage while she's doing that, and then you switch. It's one of my favorite teams to play is Encore Sanhua and like Vayrina, Baizhi maybe, right? Super fun team to play. Super hot swappy, super fast rotations, really good consistent damage over time, and relatively safe because you're switching so much. It's hard to get hit if your timing is good, right? Encore has some of the highest damage output in the game. She's actually probably higher single target damage than, I want to say, Gion when she's in her ult. But her ult is a lot shorter than Gion. So it makes her less as viable, basically, in what we could say solo content, right? She is very, very strong. She's definitely a character worth building, and probably the strongest standard banner character I've seen across any gacha game ever on her own, right? Like, she's stronger than Kalcharo on her own. She's probably borderline like a S minus tier on her own, and then with support she just gets better, and it is one of the best teams in the game. Jianshin, I'm gonna actually throw her into A tier as well. The reason why is because if you build her a specific way, the Chinese server players have actually found this out. I learned from that. I play her this way. The Bellborn Geoshalone Boss Echo gives you 50% damage reduction. So does her heavy attack stance, where she does the circle damage. You cannot get hurt if you do the bell and then her thing. You cannot be hurt. The shield is fully free. The healing is fully free. You switch to whoever. They get massive ult damage increase. She has good energy regen on her own. Her S1, I know we're not talking so much about sequences for the 5 stars because obviously they outscale everything else. Her S1, which I have, makes her so much quicker on rotation that genuinely, if you pulled her from your first 50 pulls 5-star standard banner and then you use the selector ticket on her, that's not a bad decision because it makes her probably the best, I want to say, sustained support in the game without outright, like Vayrina, damage boost, heals. Jianshin, grouping, damage boost, heals, and shield. And just scumming through bullshit attacks. If you're bad at dodging, just take no damage and stand there and basically just let it hit you and then get through it and you're fine. One of the safest characters, one of the most satisfying to play even, because her attacks come out with so many fast hitboxes, you parry very easily. She's super great as a support character right now. Now we get to a character that's not as great, and this is Yangyang. I don't personally like how this character plays. I do not own him, but I've played him in a lot of content just from like the events and stuff. And I've tested him a lot. I've seen gameplay of him. He can be fun. He's not good. His scalings are not bad. He's literally unable to fight bosses most of the time. Not being able to handle bosses kind of makes your character not nearly as good. You can juggle enemies forever. He's like the safest DPS for just juggling enemies. It's great. Bosses you cannot touch. You just can't do it. And it just absolutely kills it, right? Not being able to deal sufficient damage to bosses because your main gimmick being like stun locking them, it just doesn't work. He doesn't work well. Maybe in the future with more aerial combat based characters, you can do a kind of a hot swap aerial combat team. Like I've seen people do it with Yangyang, Jian, and Yangyang. You just, it's not better. Like Yangyang alone is going to do better. And we'll get to that in a minute because this is actually a character I'm really excited to talk about this video. Jinshi is going to be an S tier character. She's going to probably be the de facto burst DPS for a while, actually. Her scalings are stupid on her ult and her skill. At S2, she becomes absurdly quick to rotate, but we're not talking about that. You can still charge her up outside of your skill. It's just slower, and her damage is going to be a little bit less if you want to do it quicker. But the way she functions means you are pretty much coming in, doing your rotation, using your skill for massive damage scaling, like 1,000+%, and then ulting again for 1,000+%. So on her typical rotation, you're 2,000+% just off skill and ult, plus your other skills and attacks that you weave in to charge that up. Very flourishy, fun character to play. Seems very easy to handle like overworld mobs too, because she kind of floats up in the air and juggles them a little bit. Super dope character. Her damage is going to be stupid. Spectral Rover is going to immediately become better. Otherwise, without Jinshi, Spectral Rover probably C, maybe even D tier, just because they don't do a lot for most teams. They are a good safe pick. They're good at parrying, you know, but they're not absurd like the rest of these characters. Jinshi makes this character with the damage shred, the healing, the attack boot, everything like that, way more valuable, right? I would honestly not be surprised if more people start running Spectro Rover to support Jinshi than people run Havoc Rover as her own DPS, because you can just use other characters like Danjin or Taoqi, right? Changli is also going to be S tier. I think she's going to be the best fusion DPS, I think, because the thing is, Encore S0 and Chixia S6 are very similar damage output. Changli's going to surpass them massively. She has her own defense, enemy defense shred, so not damage resistance shred. So defense shred is more universal than resistance shred. As well as her scalings are really nice. The way she's going to play the game is really nice and flourishy. She's also going to be probably the best support for an Encore. For Encore to hot swap in and then back to Changli, and then into Encore, explode, back to Changli. Like, that's going to probably become a very powerful team. I think the best team with Changli, though, is going to be with Taoqi. Taoqi keeping Changli safe, giving her skill a massive damage bonus, which she's mostly skill damage focused, as well as being able to hop in and ult and deal a shit ton of damage, and then go back to Changli, who's going to do even more damage. She's going to be a very on-field DPS in my mind. Her defense shred is going to be awesome. She gets more with her sequences. Again, we're not talking about sequences for the 5-star characters, but she is going to be a very good investment, and she's also super duper cool looking to play. Her attacks are so sick. Now that we're done with the 5-star characters, we can go into the 4 stars. This is something we're actually this is going to be most of the rest of the video, because the 4 stars in this game are stupid good. I mean, just stupid good. I cannot get over how good these 4-star characters are. However, we are going to start with Yuanwu, who's D tier. Yuanwu is a character, and I stand firm on this. Yuanwu is a character that is the best support in the game for a DPS that does not exist yet. Reason being, his vibration damage has next to no payoff right now in the state of the game. Breaking a boss does damn near nothing. If we get a echo set that increases vibration damage, or like the quickness of breaking vibration, on like the 2-piece, it breaks quicker. On the 4-piece, you deal more damage to broken enemies, or when they break, they take like a burst damage based on percent scaling or something, right? He will become better as his own DPS. Then you want a DPS he can support, because a lot of his stuff is also benefiting off-field characters. That also is built around breaking boss vibration. It's going to be basically a boss and elite killer character only, probably very single target. Going to be probably one of the best characters in the game. I mean, look at Honkai Star Rail with the break teams that are coming out right now. It is a very strong mechanic, being able to stun bosses, right? Yuanwu is the worst character in the game and will very quickly become one of the best when that change happens, if it happens. I would like to see it, because otherwise breaking a boss's vibration bar and having characters built around that is a waste of time. I mean, like, seriously, why have the mechanic in if there's not going to be something that's accentuates it? But that's just me. Otherwise, Yuanwu at higher sequence levels actually gets pretty dang powerful, even in today's state of the game. And we can look at this right here. His S1 makes him attack faster, a nice increase. It makes his rotation quicker from like 4 seconds to 3.2. Right? It's actually pretty nice. His intro skill gives him energy so he can ult more. Pretty nice. His coordinated attacks, the damage is increased by more of his defense. Pretty nice. This makes him be able to deal a lot more damage on his own. When he ults, the on-field character will gain a shield. So now he can support the team. People talk about using him with a Yinlin and Kalcharo for a non-healer only shielder full electro team for just shredding boss vibration if you're good enough at dodging on your Kalcharo and your Yinlin. I don't disagree with that. Although it is better to just run Vayrina, it is a very fun gimmick, especially if it's a boss that you can't handle its attacks well. So if you can't dodge well, your Vayrina, maybe you don't have Vayrina, your Baiju's on a different team, you know, he's a pretty decent option at S4. At S5, he gets ult damage bonus increase, which is pretty nice. I mean, it's 1.5 times the damage of his ult. It makes his ult hit a little bit harder. Papa smacks, be smacking. His S6 is very nice if running with other defense scalers like Taoqi. Taoqi with Yuanwu S6 is going to hit very hard, but the issue is that this is a very diminishing return because most defense scaling characters are scaling mostly defense, not anything else. It's a diminishing return. My Taoqi already has over 120% defense. Another 30% defense is not going to be as beneficial as maybe ult damage bonus, right? So his S6 is nice. There aren't characters that can get a massive payoff from it. It's mostly his S4, allowing him to be able to be a pseudo support right now. Otherwise, this character in the future, I can see him becoming very, very powerful once we get more options, right? But as of right now, we just can't do it for him. Danjin, I want to put into A tier. I know people were like, oh my god, Danjin's cracked, and then she got nerfed after CBT2, and then we're on full release and she's not as strong. Danjin is probably one of the best, safest, easiest soloing a boss characters in the game. If you are good at the game, Danjin is your character. If you're not good at the game, Danjin still supports Havoc Rover, still supports Taoqi, supports a lot of things, right? So we can go ahead and talk about her. I have mine S6. I'm actually going to start building mine now. Her first sequence, she gets attack increase when she uses her skill, which she uses a lot. So nice damage boost. Her skill also increases her damage. Nice boost. This is a very good boost. This is a 1.2 times damage increase outright, right? Her ult gets a 1.3 times damage boost. Another good multiplier. When she has the Ruby Blossom, her crit rate increases, and the effect lasts until the end of the ult, which means your ult also has the extra crit rate, which is very nice, right? You don't have to build her as much crit. You can build her more crit damage and still see big numbers and big crits on your ult and your skills. Her S5 increases her damage bonus, and even more when she's lower than 60% HP. This is a 1.3 times damage boost the majority of the time across the board. Very nice boost, which multiplies with a lot of these first ones. Her S6, her heavy attack, increases the attack of all team members by 20%, which makes her basically able to support the rest of your teammates if you run her with teammates. Overall, her damage multipliers at S5 at least, right? Although S6, she also gets the 20% boost. Danjin becomes a very good, very high damage scaling character because of all the multipliers she puts on herself, which is why she's probably the strongest damage dealing solo character. If you had to pick one character to main and get really good at, Danjin is your pick, because Danjin actually just will cream all of the content on her own as long as they're not resistant to Havoc damage. The other thing too, her outro skill is not to be slept on either. Havoc damage amp. Very, very good. That's why you run her into Havoc Rover into Taoqi, Taoqi into Danjin. Danjin now gets the buff to her, even more of a skill damage boost, and then buffs Havoc Rover. Like there's a solid triple Havoc team right now, right? A triple Dreamless team even, although I think that it's better to run double Dreamless and a certain build on Taoqi I will get into in a minute. Danjin is a very, very powerful character, and even without Havoc Rover or Taoqi, literally solos most all content with the proper amount of investment. Which is why I think she's solidly A tier. Alto, I want to say, is C tier. Most people would put him into D tier as well. The one thing I need to note, though, is that if you build him as a DPS, he's actually a very, very safe and effective damage dealer. And I can explain this one as well. Alto, mine of which is S5. We can go over him. S1, his cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds. His cooldown is 10 seconds. It lasts for 8 seconds. He now can infinitely have his mist wall up to shoot through. His damage input increases drastically from this because there's literally no cooldown for his main damage. He's got probably the most consistent on-field damage outside from Danjin in the game, just because there's absolutely no downtime. In fact, there's even times where you can have 2 mist walls up and be shooting through both if you're really good, right? Increasing your damage even more. His S2, the taunt is tankier, and his attack gets increased. Nice scaling. His taunt gets tankier. His taunt, by the way, if you are bad at the game, is a lifesaver because bosses will go for it. It can get funky sometimes with like big AoE attacks, but when the boss goes for the taunt, you are free to just hit the boss while it's attacking something that literally isn't there. His S3, basic and mid-air attack, passes through the mist. 2 more bullets are generated, dealing half of the damage of basic or mid-air attacks. This is a big damage breakpoint for him. In like Pridewin, they don't count this for a massive damage bonus for his calculations. They calculated him wrong. I'm just going to say that outright. This is a huge damage boost for him, especially when you're not like level 90 maxed out skills. The 50% damage is higher than the typical scalings. I've seen some Alto mains play. You set up your mist, set up your ult, jump, and do a bunch, like you just butterfly click the mouse for the mid-air attacks, and the bullets, they don't deal much damage, but they pass through the wind and the ult so many times because your mid-air attacks shoot so fast. You send a massive stream of wind bullets at the boss, which deals very good damage, very safe, because the boss isn't even looking at you, it's looking at your taunt. His S4 increases the damage of his skill bullets by 30%, and he takes 30% less damage when he's in his fancy little ghost dash. The damage decrease doesn't matter too much because he's such a safe character, it really doesn't play a part, but 30% damage bonus. This isn't 30% scaling bonus, it's 30% damage, so it's a 1.3 times damage multiplier. This is another big damage spike for him. You know, it just benefits, like his S3 and S4 increases damage substantially on his missed bullets. They deal way more damage that way. His S5, he gets even more arrow damage bonus, which is a 1.25 times bonus to damage for 6 seconds, which his S1 brings his cooldown to. He will always have this up, right? Which means it's going to be pretty easy actually to build him to have just about 100% arrow damage bonus. That's a damage doubling stat. Massive, massive value. His S6 makes his ult increases crit rate as well. And when you do your heavy attack passing through it, the damage dealt is increased. The reason that this is niche is because while yes, it's probably better to do this, you are attacking slower. The idea, I think, is you jump for the mid-air attack, spam a bunch of your attacks. When you land, you click G to go into aim mode, and you just keep clicking your aimed attacks, I think, is the rotation. Otherwise, it may very well just be better to do your mid-air attacks because you throw so many bullets out at your opponent that they just get swarmed and shredded. He's damn near the Morning Aces 1 ability that's basically undodgeable because I'm bad, right? Where he sends out all the little stars and then you just die. He basically is that. As a DPS, Alto is actually genuinely not a terrible pick. I put him as C tier because no one else particularly buffs him other than, I would say, Sanhua and maybe Taoqi. In fact, not even maybe. We can check this. It's his skill. the missed bullet damage is dealing resonance skill damage. So Taoqi actually being the best support for Alto as well, if you wanted to increase his skill damage, which is probably the one multiplier that he doesn't just give himself a bunch of, right? So he can deal 50% damage with his missed bullets, 50% with the extra 2, scaling. I mean, he deals a lot of damage. You can look up Alto main Wuthering Waves on YouTube and find a bunch of gameplay of a couple different Alto mains that deal stupid good damage output with this guy. Jishia, I'm going to put into the B tier. Reason why, she's going to be easier to deal the damage that Alto does. Her damage output is going to be higher. She is a little less safe because there isn't a taunt, but her skill is also a very good basically get out of jail free card if you time it right. Her damage is pretty alright, but what scales it to Havoc's damage at Havoc S0 is her 6th sequence, is her 5th sequence. You get another 30% attack here. So when you do all of your bullets, after 30 bullets spent before you do your boom boom, you get 60% attack instead of 30. It is a very big increase to her attack stat, which allows her to build lesser so for attack on your echoes and more so for crit rate, crit damage, and fusion damage bonus. This increases her attack for basic attack damage as well as the rest of your team. This makes it to where when she ults, she immediately goes into her skill rotation. This makes it to where her ult has an execution for 1.4 times damage boost when their HP is below half. This makes it to where her ult regens energy up to 20 energy when you kill things, so she's good in AoE environments, and her boom boom will always crit, so there's no real reason you should be running anything but a crit damage boss piece on her, the 4-cost piece. Crit damage. It scales way better. Editing this part out for water drinking. Shishia just has really good damage scaling. I mean, her ultimate literally scales higher than Havoc Rovers. Everyone talks like, oh, Havoc Rover has such good scaling. Shishia's scaling is higher on her ult. Her ult also hits kind of in a circle. Her Forte Circuit deals very good damage. Her boom boom damage scales pretty good, and the fact that it's a guaranteed crit is very, very nice. And you can pretty much do the rotation of her circuit, ult rotation of her circuit yet again. She's got a very good rotation, very clean. She's one of the other best solo boss killers in the game alongside Alto and Dungeon. She's one of the best characters in the game for overall, if you're not good at the game, play this character. She's still good character in the game, and all of her sequences scale her pretty nicely. Next, we have Mortefi. I think he deserves, I want to say B tier. He requires a lot of investment to not slow down your rotation, to not mess up with like the Gion Vayrina team, because he needs to be able to get his ult up very, very rapidly, which loses you damage on your ult. You don't have to do the same thing for Yinlin. Yinlin is a better support for Gion. Your Gion won't deal as much damage. Overall, your team will. Yinlin will be doing a lot of damage off field. Mortefi, though, still a very good character, just getting basically power crept by Yinlin in a more accessible way as well with Yinlin drops him from what I would say an A tier character to a B tier character. But let's talk about him. His sequences, mostly, are really good. His S1, in fact, allows him to be a teammate with Danjin, because Danjin spams her skill. In one rotation of Danjin, of just like attack, skill, he shoots off like 8 bullets from his ult. So you just damage. He's actually good with other characters now once you get his S1. It's very nice. His S2 After using his Echo skill, you get more resonance energy, which is not great because, I mean, you're entering the battlefield. I guess you could use your Echo skill, but the goal is to kind of click E once or twice and then ult and then switch because you want his rotation to be very, very rapid. During his ult, the crit damage is increased by 30%, which, again, diminishing returns. It's like instead of a 1.5, like at base, right? 1.5 times boost, so 1.8 times boost to your damage, which is nice. But say he's got 220% crit. It's a 2.2 to 2.5 times increase. It's just less and less the more crit damage you have, but still a very nice bonus. His S4, the duration gets extended by 7 seconds. This is a big breakpoint for him, just outright. The bigger duration means that your rotation is not nearly as fast. You can play this rotation slower and get way more damage output from your Gion or etc. character that you want to be using with him. It's very nice just overall, even with like Danjin, so Danjin can stay on field longer and do her combos more, right? S5 increases his resonance liberations hits fired. When he ults, now instead of skill ult with this, you want to ult skill because he's going to shoot between the two skills 8 more bullets. The damage is reduced by 50%, but it's still 8 bullets, and because you get an extra 7 seconds here, you're not losing really any damage on your Gion, so it just changes his rotation ever so slightly to allow him to deal some damage while he's on the field as well. And then his S6, the attack of your whole team is buffed. This is very nice just as a generic support to be able to make the attack of the rest of your teammates higher, such as Gion. And yes, his outro is very good, but overall, he's just getting outshined in damage output for Yinlin. Yinlin is just an absurdly good character. Still, even after patch 1.1, probably the best character in the game. Next, we get Baizhi. Baiju's going to take A tier as well. Baizhi will drop down in the tier list, admittedly, as more like pure healing supports come out. Think Barbara from Genshin Impact, although healing was never as important in that game as it is in this game, which is funny because in this game, you could just dodge. But not everybody can just dodge, and for the vast majority, 95+% of players, you need a healing support, or at least a shielding support on your team for the sustain. Baizhi gives damage bonus, attack bonus, amplification, although it's at a much shorter time frame than Veyrina, so she's a lot better on quick swap teams. And she overall has a faster rotation to you. Basic attack 4 times, click E, switch. Maybe click your ultimate as well. So you do 4 attacks, skill, maybe ult, switch. Right, she's much quicker than Veyrina, going in, jumping in the air, doing her attacks, clicking her skill, maybe ulting, you know, doing some basics to charge up more photosyntheses, right? Baizhi is a lot quicker, but a lot quicker cooldown of her buffs, and her buffs don't exactly affect the whole team, they affect the next character, which is why I believe, personally, she is the best support for teams like Encore and Sanhua, because you can go Baizhi into Sanhua, Sanhua's damage is increased substantially, Sanhua into Encore, Encore's damage is increased substantially, Encore outros out, and like explodes and everything, and you go back to Baizhi, and it's a very safe team, and it buffs the team in kind of a line. Otherwise, she is kind of clunky in most other comps, but she's still very important to build right now. I will say if another healer comes out, probably going to be a better healer than Veyrina. Veyrina stays S tier. That new healer is also probably S tier, and Baizhi probably drops down to like B tier. But she's very good. Looking at her sequences, we also get to see how she does get a little bit better with these. Her first one, she gains ult energy for every concentration consumed up to 4, so you're gaining 10 ult energy every rotation you do where you attack 4 times and then use your skill. It's nice for her energy regen. Her second sequence increases her own glacio damage and healing by 15% if she has the 4 concentration, so she just gets more healing. And I've seen people run her as a DP, like a pseudo DPS build. she looks really fun to play as a DPS, and actually not terrible, but because she doesn't scale off of HP for damage, she scales off of attack for damage. Sadly, I do not recommend doing that. But this also benefits her if you decide to build her for damage, which you can do with anybody in this game. Even like Vayrina can deal good damage. You just have to really hyper invest and get really good at dodging, because your fights are going to last a little bit longer than with the better DPSs. Her third sequence makes her intro skill increase her max HP, which increases the damage of her skill and increases the damage of her ult and increases her healing. So overall, this is a pretty solid scaling. It's not just whatever thing heals for 12% more, her HP increases, which, you know, again, diminishing returns, but it still helps more than it inherently needs to. Because it could just be one niche thing. This makes her whole kit better. Her S4 makes it to where you get 2 more attacks out of her ult. So instead of like 4 or 6, it goes to 6 or 8. However it works. I'm not going to look, but it's 4 or 6 little attacks. I think it's 4. 4 attacks on her ult every 2.5 seconds or something like that. And now it goes up by 2. The healing multiplier is increased, and it increases by an additional 1.2% of her max HP, which means it deals more damage. Pretty solid, makes her off-field damage pretty solid, and it only is going to scale higher as we get echo sets that is like HP percent instead of just the attack percent one we have now. We're going to get an HP set, we're going to get a defense set, we're going to get more sets for the base stats over time. She will scale better with those as well. Her S5 is a revive once every 10 minutes to 100% HP. Very, very good, especially if you're bad, which again, most players are going to lose characters in big fights, big difficult fights. She brings them back immediately to 100% HP once every 10 minutes. So a very, very solid safety net. This makes her way more valuable on a team if you are trying to fight a boss that realistically you are not good enough to beat, but are built enough to beat damage wise. You just get killed first, makes her way more valuable. Her S6, when she drops her things that give attack boosts when you pick them up, you also get glacial damage bonus. Very good. Basically becomes Sanhua's best support if Sanhua is your main DPS, which I know some people do play Sanhua as main DPS. Also, she's just probably one of the prettiest. She's probably like top 2 prettiest characters in the game alongside Yinlin. It's a pretty solid debate actually between the two. So build her. It's going to be worth it. You need healers. After that, we get Sanhua. I'm going to say Sanhua is probably S tier. She's probably the bottom of S tier, but I would say she's S tier. She supports everybody. She supports to some regard Jinshi. She supports to some regard Changli. She supports to some regard Jian, Yinlin, Havoc Rover, Encore for sure. Kalcharo even a little bit, although he's not very basic attack based. She also supports Danjin pretty well, because some of Danjin's damage is from basics, weaving basics and skills. She also supports Baizhu, because Baizhu, if you built Baizhu for damage for whatever reason, Baizhu is also basic attack damage. She also supports Spectro Rover pretty well. Spectro Rover is who you're trying to build for damage, because she likes to do basic attacks. She super duper supports Alto, because Alto also really likes his basic attacks. And she also super supports Yuanwu, because he also likes to do his basic attacks. She also just has a very quick rotation, very good energy regen, and hits very, very good. The biggest things with her sequences, because her sequences to me have always seemed like probably some of the weakest, is she gains some crit rate after basic attack 5. You almost never use this unless you're main DPSing her. Otherwise, if she's a hot swap sub DPS, you're never using this. This one is nice just because she can't get interrupted as easily, and she doesn't use as much stamina when she does do her rotation on quick swap. This is basically an execute effect, which is pretty nice damage scaling. This increases her damage actually pretty substantially. It's 1.35 times damage multiplication. if they're below 70% HP. This is actually the first good one probably for her kit for overall damage. This one restores resonance energy when she ults, and the damage of the next heavy attack is increased, which is a nice damage boost, but realistically, it's mostly the energy regen, so she generates even more. Her S5, the crit damage is actually really good, so that you can build her with like 100% crit rate or close to it, and then have that crit damage still be 250% minimum on your main rotation. This is by far and away her best sequence, because it makes it to where you can basically run her as a main DPS and not be losing out on her team utility, because she keeps everything. Like, this makes her a main sub DPS everything. Her S6 increases team members' attack, which stacks up to 2 times. It's just 20% for 20 seconds. Pretty standard S6 for most 4-star characters. Overall, she's not the easiest to play, because you do have to time her heavy attack with the bar, and you also have to make sure that you're doing it in a safe way so you're not getting hit out of it and wasting a ton of damage potential. But her scalings are very good. You know, she's able to deal all of this damage and then pop it all again plus another attack, so she has some of the best burst damage in the game. Now we get to 2 characters. These 2 characters are characters that I'm very happy to talk about, because I think everyone gets their placements horrendously wrong. We're going to start with Taoqi, because Taoqi's the one I know the most about and play the most. I fully believe Taoqi's an A-tier character. The reason why is, well, a few reasons. Her shield is nice for sustain for most players. She heals herself, which is nice. She has damage reduction, which is nice, and I'll get more in depth with that in a minute. Her damage output is stupid for how much field time she requires. Now, we can talk about this one. Taoqi is defense scaling. Her ult at max level scales up to around 400 and some odd percent. I will tell you right now, the way she is for me, 2000 defense, level 60 Dauntless Evernight, her best weapon by far, all these defense buffs, some echoes, not even havoc damage set, because I think that it's wasted on her. I think she's better on Moonlit or healing. I built healing, I don't like it, I'm going back to Moonlit. All of these upgrades, everything. Her ult hits so hard like that, and then you can just switch out. Her outro is one of the best outros in the game, because it's skill damage amp, which you can go back here, skill damage amp. If main DPS Yinlin's best support, like sub DPS. If you're running main DPS Yinlin, that's not like S6 main DPS, right? It's her best support, because her skill damage is everything. Skill damage, you're also getting Changli. When Changli comes out, Taoqi's going to be her best support if she's main DPS. You also get, there is a way to play Encore where you basically switch in, do her skill, then switch until you explode, or just skill, explode, and switch. Best support for that as well. You're also getting Danjin. It's basically Danjin's best support. You're also getting Spectro Rover. It's one of Spectro Rover's best supports. It's also Chishia's best support. Very, very good support character for that damage boost for the skill. Very good sustain. Very good damage. Mine hits, depending on the enemy and the resistances, on a crit for anywhere from 30 to 50,000 damage at level 60. Her stats aren't even amazing. She's not even gaining a lot. A lot of these, like, literally aren't barely leveled. They're all plus 15. That one's plus 20, right? And I'm actually getting rid of a lot of these to switch her onto Moonlit, because her energy regen, she likes having energy regen. She does not need it depending on the team, especially with Yinlin, because Yinlin will just charge her anyways. But without Yinlin, she needs the energy regen, and buffing the next character's attack stat by that higher amount, even on top of her skill damage bonus, is better in the teams that she's good in. Her sequences are also really awesome. This just increases the shield, which doesn't matter a lot because her shield's already pretty good, but it is nice. Her S2 is massive. Her ult gets 20% crit rate and crit damage. This makes her a lot easier to build if you get some good crit rate subs. You can get around 50% and just build a lot of crit damage, which should be her boss piece. Her skill is extended to 30 seconds, which is also very nice if you're switching into other characters and using her as a pure support. Although I don't think it matters that much because you're typically using this for damage as well. Her S4 is very nice because when she does parry, she heals a quarter of her HP and gains 50% defense for 5 seconds. If you can fit this into her rotation, not easy to do. You have to time it with the boss attacking you. If you can fit this into her rotation, her damage increases just even more. Her S5 increases the damage of her Forte circuit, and she gets more resonance energy. Very good, very important for just overall energy economy. And her S6 increases her basic and heavy attack damage by 40% when the shield is granted by the Rocksteady shield, which is also nice for when you go to parry and then you do your attacks or her intro or whatever, right? Her main rotation, you intro, attack, 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 click Q, click like your echo skill, your ult, switch, right? The damage output is kind of stupid. This increases your defense even more. This makes it to where you take up almost no stamina. If you build her on a 4-3-3-1-1 set with the havoc damages on your 3 pieces and defense everywhere else, other than unless your substats are absurd, you run crit damage or crit rate as your boss piece. If you have absurd subs for crit and crit damage, you can run her on a defense main piece, which increases her damage even more if you, again, have the subs for it. Her damage output's nuts. Is 180% crit damage. Mine hits the ult's 40% pretty much crit rate, 2000 defense. I'm critting for stupid amounts of damage that she should not be able to do, but because of how she scales, it's just multiply, 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 multiply. Yinlin being basically her best teammate to swap between. She keeps Yinlin safe. Yinlin deals lots of damage, switches out. Taoqi hits about every second because she's slow. And then she gets the big ult damage increase as well. It's just massive. My favorite team in the game is Yinlin, Taoqi, Jianshin, right? It's so safe, so much damage output. It's awesome. She is also just pretty much one of the best supports in the game with how there's so many skill damage based characters that would love to utilize her. You can also build her on a Havoc set with Dreamless, but you are losing on a lot of the benefits, such as Elborn Geoshalone. You click the Echo skill, click your skill to get your 3 shields, go into parry stance holding heavy attack. You have 100% damage reduction. The boss is going to do a one-shot move, and you tank it because it deals 0, because you reduce all the damage to 0. Unless the bosses start having damage shred mechanic, like defense shred mechanics, which gets scary. Just anyways, because you're just that much squishier. You will never take damage. You at least survive 1 hit, and then the next hit is reduced by, it's going to be another 5%. So you take 5% of the damage on the next hit. Because it's 35 in parry stance, 5 per shield, and you only lose 1 per attack, right? Absurdly safe character, absurdly strong character, one of the best sub DPSs in the game. Sanhua overshadows her for sure, but for sub DPSs, she's second best. Now, Yangyang. The biggest thing about Yangyang that people just don't talk about is that her sequences in the Rainbow Coral shop thing, the premium, like you pull 4-star, you get the Rainbow Coral 5-star, right? That shop, you can get her sequences for basically free through that. And this is what made me want to make this video based on, sequences, right? Because people will eventually get sequences. And this tier list, sequence-less, is pretty accurate. I mean, the only ones that I would really shift is like Chishio would go down to C tier. And Mortefi might even go down to C tier with her. And Alto might go down to D tier because his sequences give him a lot of damage output. But the 4 stars in this game are really good, just outright, and their sequences just make them work better. Yangyang's sequences are stupid. And we're going to look at this before I rate her. We're going to look at what her sequences do. Her sequences, her S1 increases her arrow damage bonus for 8 seconds upon entering the field with her intro skill. Nice damage boost for her. Her S2, her heavy attack recovers additional energy for her when it hits a target once every 20 seconds. Pretty nice. Her S3, her skill damage bonus is increased by 40%. This is the skill damage bonus. So not skill damage scaling, not just outright damage, but the skill damage bonus that you can get on substats and stuff on echoes. But still, 40% on that is very nice. It's a 1.4 times damage boost if you have 0% other bonus on her skill. Her wind field's pulling effect on the surrounding targets is enhanced, and the pulling range is expanded by 33%, making her an even better enemy grouper. Big breakpoint for her as a grouping support. Her S4 and S5 are dumb. Her mid-air attack feather release, which is the main, like, the big one when she's charged, damage increased by 95%. So whatever she deals before this is unlocked, double it, basically, right? And you can actually do the math here off of just her scalings, right? Feather release damage. Calculate her scalings, just times 2, whatever that percentage is, because of the, I believe it's the communicative property of math. I could be wrong, could be transitive, but communicative property of mathematics. It doesn't matter what it multiplies onto. It's still doubling something, which is then multiplying into everything else. So we can take it on her scalings and see that her scalings go from, this is about 125% here plus another 55% here. Again, at level 1, right? 125 plus 55, you're looking at 100 and 180%, we'll say. Scaling just on the feather release damage. Now it's 360% scaling on her skill. Her skill gets very strong, and at higher levels, it increases more because it's just the damage. It's not the scaling, it's the damage. So every level you put into this, you're effectively leveling it up twice. Her skill basically at level 10 is a level 20 scaling skill. Her damage gets stupid on that skill. The next thing we have to realize is her S5 increases her ult's damage by 85%. I did the math the other night when I looked at this, and I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Because I was trying to see who had higher scaling than Havoc Rover, who, from my knowledge, everyone says has the highest ult scaling. Even with Havoc Rover's defense shred on enemies and all the other extraneous buffs in their sequences, Yangyang at S5 has a higher scaling on her ult, because her ult deals 187 plus what is essentially 300% here. That's going to be about 490%. And this is about level 1, 480, 490%. I'll say 480. 480 times almost 2. This being at level 1. You are 960% scaling at level 1. Havoc Rover at level 4 is about 978%. Yangyang goes over 1,000% damage scaling at like level 3. Maybe even level 2, right? We can look. Yep. 200% plus 100, 200, 300, that's 500% times 1.85 times, which is a separate scaling than Resonance Liberation damage bonus, which increases the damage of that even more, similar to how you'd build a Havoc Rover. Her scalings get stupid. Her skill, or like her Forte Circuit, the feather release damage when she's in midair, gets stupid amounts of damage. This gets stupid amounts of damage because it's the damage bonus, which keeps her from just clicking E and just eviscerating everything because it's just straight up another multiplier. But these her S4 and S5 multiply separately from uh ult damage bonus. This like Forte circuit damage bonus doesn't exist, right? But this has way better scaling, makes it a pretty nice skill. Her ult actually shreds enemies at S5. This is something people aren't talking about. Her ultimate is statistically the highest scaling ult in the game until Jinshi comes out, of which she contends with. I haven't quite done the math. She's either still first or barely drops to second place to a S0 Jinshi. Obviously, when you put sequences on 5 stars, it gets better. But as of right now, S5 Yangyang has the highest ult damage scaling in the game. And people just aren't talking about it. And it groups. And she's a great hot swap character at S6 after doing her feather release and then like basically ulting to group everything afterwards. Your attack of your teammates goes up for 20% for 20 seconds. She runs probably either arrow set, right? Because arrow set actually buffs after intro for her own damage, which is not a bad idea given her ult hits so hard. Or you could go Moonlit Clouds just for more energy regen as a sub, like a giga sub DPS, because her outro skill just charges a massive amount of energy for the next character for free on top of already having massive energy regen with energy regen weapons and energy regen subs. Before S5, I would run her Moonlit set with this weapon, as well as like energy recharge on her 3-cost pieces, probably. At S5, arrow set, 5-piece, arrow damage bonus, attack, probably crit rate or crit damage. I'd say crit damage because the free, when you hit union level 45, if you get the one-handed sword, it's crit rate scaling. That also gives energy recharge, which also gives a damage boost on, I believe it's either your basic attacks or your skills, which both of which she basically does, right, to charge her Forte circuit. At S5, Yangyang may very well be one of the strongest like hot swappy burst DPSs in the game, who also groups, who also just has just massive damage, supports your team, gives a 20% damage bonus at S6. Her damage output gets really stupid. It just gets really stupid. A lot of enemy sucking up. You know, she's got a lot of energy recharge. Like if there was ever a main sustained on field, possibly AoE, possibly not, DPS, that had like a 200 cost energy ult or something like astronomically high, Yangyang's their best support. Yangyang is the best grouping character in the game, best damage dealer in the game. At S4, S3. S3, she becomes by far and away the best grouper. Basically, her E skill does the same as Jianshin's ult, pretty much. And her ult just does absurd amounts of damage. Like, Jianshin could literally never reach her damage output because Yangyang's damage output is literally some of the highest in the game. Now, something that's been brought to my attention. This could be a typo. It's Kuro Games. For some reason, they can't localize to English worth a damn the first time. And maybe this could raise awareness, and they're like, hey, that's not what it's supposed to do. Let's fix that. But as of right now, going off of what it says, as well as what I've been talking about with some other people, some other creators, Yangyang's ult is the strongest ult in the game. Aside from, you could argue, Gion and Calcharo, because theirs isn't a one-time burst, it's sustained damage, which is different. But for a ult, you click ult and it does the damage. You don't have to do anything else. Her ult is literally the best in the game. And her energy recharge is the best in the game, better than Vayrina. Which makes me firmly believe that Yangyang, instead of being a D tier character, a C tier character, maybe a B tier character as a support, I fully believe at higher sequence levels, Yangyang is a S tier character. Even before you get the sequences that make her deal a lot of damage, in any AoE scenario, think Tower of Adversity. When you need to group enemies on the lower floors before it's the boss floors, she's the most valuable character on the team because she speeds up your clears by grouping massively and making it to where your teammates get the energy regen they need. And I do just want to say, I think she is literally the best third character on 2 core character teams. If you don't know what that is, that's like Kalcharo Yinlin's a 2 core character team. Encore Sanhua is a 2 core character team, right? Any team where their damage output is just 2 characters, or even less, but just 2 characters is their damage output. And then you'd run like a healing support that gives damage bonuses. If you don't need the heals, Yangyang is the best in any multi-target scenario because she groups for your single target characters to be able to basically hit all of the enemies, because every single target character basically has a very small amount of AoE on the hitbox of their attack, where if all of the enemies are in the same area and that hitbox is hitting that area, you're hitting all the enemies. It makes Gion doesn't really count, he does AoE, but like Kalcharo's damage skyrockets if you're able to hit all of the small enemies with Kalcharo. Encore's damage skyrockets if you're able to do the same thing with her. Danjin, Changli's going to be the same way. Jinshi's going to be the same way. Sanhua kind of is the same way. She's pseudo AoE, you could say. The Rovers get better. Alto even could get better. I'm not certain if his missed bullets have a somewhat AoE hitbox, but she also increases their attack and she becomes the best burst DPS basically when she is S5 and S6. Havoc Rover is only on a technicality better because you have Dreamless, so you switch in ult Dreamless leave. Maybe do some like skill and some other things. At S4, her skill damage increases so much, or her mid-air attack thing increases so much, and her skill damage increases and sucks up. I think Yangyang is probably one of the most valuable sub DPS / support characters you could build in the entire game at the moment. And I do not think she will become worse unless there's a grouper that just is essentially the grouping level of Venti, which, I mean, she basically is just outright. I think she's one of the most valuable characters you can build in the entire game, and she's super fun to play. She plays like a little arrow damage Hu Tao from Genshin Impact, basically. She dashes back and forth and does some air things. She's super sick. Overall, this is pretty much the tier list. C tier being very barren because Alto basically just not being B tier but not being D tier. Yangyang, you could argue, could go to, I'm gonna say Yangyang is C tier because his damage output is at least fine, and in the scenarios he's good, he works. Yuanwu is genuinely the worst character in the game, bar none, because the way he wants to play isn't a viable play style yet. He will get better. Otherwise, this is the tier list. Characters play a little differently than the optimal rotations everyone keeps talking about as well. Like Kalcharo, he plays a lot safer than people think, a lot less quick swappy, which makes his damage output higher on his own. You know, and sequences help a lot, but also just Taoqi's been underrated for too long. Yangyang's been way underrated for too long. Danjin's been underrated. Kind of, not really, but a little underrated for too long. Chisha's been underrated for too long. They're absurdly safe. This is the overall best tier list for the majority of people, right? Yangyang before S3, I'll say, is A tier. Maybe B tier, just because it, like, if you have John Shin, gives more heals and shield. You get her S3, she goes to A. You get her S5, she goes to S. And S6, she's even better. But even before then, I mean, her scalings are not bad. It's just about half, a little more than half of what a Havoc Rover can do. And I mean, honestly, her ult does more damage than Sanhua, who's known for having a very cleave based ult damage, because it's like 800% scaling at max level. She is pretty damn close to that. And it groups. And the grouping, I think, makes her more valuable. Like, she'll never be below B tier right now. I think she, like, the lowest she goes is A. But I'll put her S because she's, especially for if you don't have the investment in your characters where you're trying to get the damage output, but you cannot keep energy regen up. So it's like a bad balancing game. Now you have the damage output and the energy regen. She makes the game easier, grouping enemies, energy regen, and then her damage gets stupid at higher sequence levels. And she's simple, easy, fun to play, very good frame data. She's just a very good character. You're sleeping on her. Anyways, that's going to be it for the tier list. This is just the tier list. Don't look at anybody else's. Look at mine. This is the tier list because this is the actual field-tested tier list. I've played everybody other than Jinshi Chongli, but just even looking at their leaks, they're gonna be broken. They're gonna be nuts. Everyone's gonna be nuts. All the new characters are gonna be nuts, but the 4 stars are actually like all majorly being slept on. They are so easy, great damage, great safety, like everything. Honestly, a 4-star only account would not even be bad, and you could clear the Tower of Adversity. Not right now, probably. Unless, of course, if you whale, you could, but for free-to-plays and Dolphins in the future, you could literally build only 4 stars and clear the hardest content we have in the game right now. Tactical holograms, easily, with just Danjin alone. Other than the one that walls Danjin out because of resistance, you can do it with Danjin literally alone for everything. But yeah, that'll be it for the tier list. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time. Join me on my Twitch, twitch.tv/Cashy Swanson, and hang out when I stream. I do most all of these videos live, just like this one.